Hello, everybody. It's an absolute delight to be here. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you so much for coming out on this Wednesday lunchtime, very sunny Wednesday lunchtime, to come and hear me talk. And hello to everybody online as well. You're also very welcome. Um, I'm going to take this opportunity today to tell you about the University of East Anglia Archive, where I work, and more particularly about our fantastic literary archive, which we call the British Archive for Contemporary Writing, which will be celebrating its 10th anniversary this coming September. We're going to take the whole year to celebrate. I think I recognise some faces in the audience. I think some of you may have been to see us before. So apologies for any repetition, but it's lovely to see you again. Okay, so let me start at the beginning. So where are we, first of all? It can be a bit of a challenge to find us on the UEA campus. So the British Archive for Contemporary Writing, we live in the UEA Library building, which you can see a lovely picture of here. It is it's in fact a grade 2 listed 1960s concrete building. So you are looking at a cultural masterpiece here. We live on the ground floor, which is all the way to the bottom of the stairs on floor 02. You go all the way down the stairs and you turn left. So anyone is welcome to visit the UEA library between the hours of 8 in the morning and 6 in the evening. There are no entrance barriers anymore. You don't have to sign in. You can just walk through the door and come and have a look, which you are very welcome to do. We've just had a big refurbishment of the entry floor, which is floor 0. And you can now get spectacular views of the Broads and the campus grounds as well. So I recommend popping in there if you're ever on campus. And if you do come and do research in UEA Library, you can also get a guest IT login for a day as well. It doesn't give you access to everything, but just to let you know, it's a kind of little known fact that members of the public are welcome at UEA Library, and you can also log into the computers. The library was designed by Denis Lasdun in the 1960s, and it is protected. So our drafty windows in the reading room are in fact a cultural artifact, just so you know. So I'd like to introduce you to our team. We have a small team at the archive. There's myself there on the left. I'm the archives manager. We also have Bridget Gillies, who is our archives assistant. Bridget's incredibly knowledgeable about the UEA archive in particular, and she looks after all of our readers and inquiries. So you may well meet Bridget if you come to see us. We're ably assisted by our humanities librarian, Grant Young, who's been doing a little bit of work with our special collections books, which I'll tell you a little bit more about later. And on the end there is our academic director, Dr. Jeremy Noel-Todd. He helps us with our kind of direction of collecting and helps us speak to the academics and be kind of more integrated in the university. So this is our team at UEA Archive. Okay. Now, let me tell you a little bit about the other bits of the archive. This is going to be my sales pitch today, I'm afraid. So the first thing that we hold is the archive of the University of East Anglia. So we have some really interesting material around the history of the university, the building of the campus. I don't know if you know, but it was a golf course beforehand, yeah. And the Broad was built when the university was set up. We also have great things like student newspapers right from those early days in the 1960s, student prospectuses, handbooks. We have some letters home by some of the early students, and many other things relating to the history of the whole university. So over the years, the archive has also accumulated a variety of historic archive collections. So we have several collections that relate to lecturers and particular courses at the university. And we also have the archive collections of some politicians, some theatres, some suffragettes and some scientists. I'm going to give you a couple of examples now. So we're very lucky to hold the records of the climatologist Hubert Lamb, who was the founder of the Climatic Research Unit and a pioneer in the study of climate change. We also have the archive of Guy Stewart Callender, who was the first person to link rising CO2 levels with global temperature change. You can see that science isn't my forte, so I'm reading these facts out for you. Another really important scientific collection, which gets us really excited, is Solly Zuckerman. Zuckerman was integral to the setting up of the university, and he was the founder of the environmental science department. He had this incredible kind of polymath career in the sciences. He worked all across different fields in zoology, nuclear disarmament, human anatomy, all sorts of different things. He was also an advisor to the British government on bombing strategy during World War II. And his research team discovered the causes of blast damage. So when someone's killed by a bomb blast and there's no physical injury or mark on them, that team discovered how those kind of injuries happened. So one of the real stars of that collection is the Zuckerman's research team were tasked by the British government to investigate the impact of bombing on what they called civilian neuroses, or what we might understand as mental health or trauma. As part of that project, they asked 2,000 school children in Hull and Birmingham to write an essay about their experiences. The essays were titled "What I Did and What Happened to Me in an Air Raid." So we have these essays in the archive. They're a completely unique collection. You can't get that kind of first-hand perspective of children's experience of bombing in the war anywhere else. So we're incredibly fortunate to hold that collection. We also have the collection of a pair of working class sisters, Annie and Jessie Kenny, who were leading figures in the militant arm of the suffragette movement, so the campaign for women to have the vote in the UK. The collection includes correspondence with others in the movement, badges, sashes, newspapers, and many other really exciting items. One of my favourites in that collection, during the First World War, the suffragettes suspended campaigning for women to have the vote. They were very patriotic and they wanted to support the war effort. So Jessie Kenny, one of the sisters, went to Russia on a government-sponsored mission in 1917, which to me just seems like a completely extraordinary thing to do. And while she was in Russia, she kept a desk diary. So she wrote about her experiences, about the people that she met, what they saw. And we have that desk diary in our archive strong room, and it's still unpublished, which is quite an extraordinary item for us to have, really. Lovely. Okay, moving on. I'll stop talking about the historic collections. So another aspect of our collections are the library special collections. This is a huge collection of mostly rare printed books. So these items might not necessarily be unique like the archival material, but it's very difficult to replace and they're quite fragile and need a lot of looking after. One of our earliest items include a manuscript copy of Cicero's Philippica. I don't know if I'm saying that right. I'm not a Roman specialist, unfortunately. And that was written in about 1450. We're also the proud owners of an early printed incunable. So Moralia in Job by Gregory the Great, which was printed in Venice in 1485. So if you think about the history of printing, that's pretty early doors for a printed book. So we're very lucky to hold that as well. We also hold a Fakespeare volume. It purports to be a first folio of Shakespeare's plays, but it is in fact a convincing Victorian reproduction. So on one of my first trips around the strong room, I caught sight of it and went, a first folio? No, don't get too excited. So what do we do with all these exciting collections? Like other archival institutions, we're interested in preserving unique original material which has been preserved for its informational value. So that's the information that it can give the researcher that you can't get in that form anywhere else. It can be manuscript, so handwritten, typed, and increasingly they're also audiovisual or digital as well. I'll tell you a little bit about our digital collections a bit later on. We use acid-free packaging material and we keep everything in a temperature-controlled strong room as well, which is also clean. It's just been cleaned. I'm very excited about this. The things we get excited about. So that's to prolong the life of the archives and keep them safe for future use. Okay. The next thing we did with the archives is we want everyone to access them. We want everyone to come and see them. And we are open to the general public. So we're not just there for staff and students. We have an online catalogue and a website, which you can search things up on there. We also have a list of our collections, but we also have some kind of information on our website. So everything's broken down into themes if you need a way to kind of jump into the collections as well. As I said, we're open to staff, students, members of the public, and we also have visiting fellows who get some funding to come and work with our collections as well. We have a website, we have blogs, and we also organise symposiums and exhibitions sometimes as well. So keep your eyes peeled for those. And one of the interesting aspects of working in a university archive is we do actually do a lot of teaching. We design and host sessions for about 500 students a year. The count last year was 544 students in about 80 hours of teaching. I feel tired just saying that out loud. It's good fun though. We cover a really diverse range of subjects in the humanities, and we also had some visitors from the medical school recently to come and see our Victorian anatomy books. We have student placements for our postgraduate students who can get funding to come and work with us. And we have a volunteering blog writing scheme for our students as well. And we also have schools come and visit us, which is good fun. So that's lots of the things that we do. Right, I promise I'll stop my sales pitch now and tell you a bit more about the literary collections. So let's get back to the British Archive for Contemporary Writing. The archive was founded in 2015 when we were very fortunate to be supported financially by the Foyle Foundation and the Doris Lessing Literary Estate, who helped fund the beginning of the archive. An archivist was appointed and we made a 5-year plan to let us know what we should be doing so we can keep checking back to that. So now I want to introduce you specifically to our literary archive collections and give you a glimpse into what those hold. And I'm going to tell you some of my favourite stories from our star collections. So normally when I talk about these, I have the objects in front of me. So I appreciate it's a lot of me talking today. So bear with me. A bit later, I'll give you some information about our unique archive collecting model, our latest research project, and what the future holds for the archive. So firstly, what do I mean when I say a literary archive? You know, we're quite sure about what we mean by it, but obviously lots of people may not be familiar with the term. We think it's anything that survives and evidences the writer's creative process. So this could be diaries, notebooks, manuscripts, typescript drafts, editorial work, correspondence, professional and personal, a public footprint, so things like press cuttings, interviews. The administration of a writer's life can give us information about creative works as well. And often we find in the archives, the personal is intertwined with the professional. So we end up collecting both because that information about how literary works are made resides in both personal and professional spheres. Oh, I'm going to tell you a bit more about this picture first. So a really good example of how the personal and the professional for writers bind together. You can see in this picture, we're very lucky to hold the Whitehorn letters. So these are love letters between Doris Lessing and 3 RAF servicemen whom she was in love with. She was also married to somebody else. They all knew about each other. This was all fine. So this is why she was married to her second husband, Godfrey Lessing. She was in love with John Whitehorn, Cole MacDonald, and Leonard Smith, who was known as Smithy. So we hold 110 letters between Lessing and Whitehorn, which often involved correspondence for Cole and Smithy as well. So these RAF servicemen become recognisable characters in Lessing's 1962 novel, The Golden Notebook. The letters show us the minute detail of Lessing's life, her emotional world, and the conditions of the time which formed this great work of literature. So you can literally see the story and the characters being formed in these letters. Okay. Lovely. So, whose work do we hold in the archive so far? There's a big list here. I'll list some of the names, not all of them, because we'll be here all day. So you've got Doris Lessing, Lee Child, Naomi Alderman, Tash Howe, Adam Folds, Sarah Taylor, Andrew Cowan. I could go on. So I don't know if you can see all of those. We have 36 writers and counting at the moment. So we're very fortunate to have all these writers. And I'm going to tell you a bit more about how we collect them in a minute. Okay, so why the British Archive for Contemporary Writing at the University of East Anglia? Why UEA? Why Norwich? So I don't know if you know, but UEA has the oldest and most successful creative writing programme in the UK, which started in 1970. The creative writing course is an MA, and it was founded by Sir Malcolm Bradbury and Sir Angus Wilson. The course was offered by the School of English and American Studies, as it was then. And its first candidate was the novelist Ian McEwan, who's the author of Atonement and On Chesil Beach, amongst many other works. Other illustrious alumni include Kashu Ishiguro, the author of Remains of the Day and Never Let Me Go, Anne Enright, the author of The Gathering, and Tracy Chevalier, author of The Girl with a Pearl Earring. The graduate list is obviously much longer than this. And when you start to look at the kind of alumni of this course, the list of names is a bit ridiculous, really, how many successful novelists and writers we have coming out of UEA. So BACW, the British Archive for Contemporary Writing, holds archive collections from lecturers who were crucial to setting up and running that creative writing programme. So Malcolm Bradbury, Lorna Sage, Andrew Cowan, and Christopher Busby as well, who was a real key figure in the setting up of the literary archive. So we have kind of the archive of the course as well as some of the writers. Material around the creative writing programme naturally accumulated at UEA, and researchers started being interested in the history of the programme and the teaching of creative writing in an institutional setting. So we get quite a lot of researchers who are interested in how do you teach someone how to write a book, how to write a novel or a poem. Let me just move my slides along here. Okay, so a watershed moment came for UEA when we received the astoundingly generous donation of Doris Lessing's personal archive. I'm just going to introduce Doris to you in case you're not familiar with her work. She was born in Persia, which is now Iran, and raised in southern Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe. She moved to London in 1949 to be a writer. Her famous works include The Grass is Singing, The Golden Notebook, The Good Terrorist, and many more, too many to be listed here. Lessing was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature in 2007. She donated her personal archive to UEA in 2008 with a subsequent deposit after her death in 2013. And we also very proudly hold one of her typewriters, which you may see floating about in the photographs of this presentation. The archive consists of 153 boxes of diaries and correspondence with the great minds of the 20th century. It captures Lessing's opinions on politics, religion, feminism, the media, and what it's like to grow older as well. The letters are witty, charming, and often acidic, revealing the inner world of one of our greatest writers. So for UEA to receive this archive, it was a moment where they thought, actually, we need to do something about these literary archives. We need to put these together and make sense of them and make them available to researchers. And that became the foundation of the British Archive for Contemporary Writing. So one of our favourite parts of Lessing's correspondence, which we get out all the time, is Lessing turning down the offer of a damehood in the honours list, which he did in both 1997 and 1992. In 1977, Lessing responded to the offer of an honour. Thank you for offering me this honour. I'm very pleased. But for some time now, I've been wondering, but where is this British Empire? Surely there isn't one. And now I see I'm not the only one saying the same. She refers to Ruritania, a fictional country invented by the novelist Anthony Hope. Lessing wrote, there is something Ruritanical about honours given in the name of a non-existent empire. And surely there is something unlikable about a person when old, accepting honours from an institution she attacked when young. And yet, how pleasant to be a dame. I would adore it. Dame of what? Dame of the British Islands? Dame of the British Commonwealth? Dame of ... Never mind. The Telegraph newspaper at the time, so they quote Lessing after her Nobel Prize award, saying the win had been a bloody disaster. All I do is give interviews and spend time being photographed, which I think is classically Lessing. So when I introduce Doris Lessing to the undergraduate students, I use a little video clip from Newsnight on the BBC after she won the Nobel Prize, as it really gives you a sense of her as a person before you see her papers. So fingers crossed the technology works, everybody. Here we go. Can I make it play, Vicky?
It did play before.
It did play
Yeah, if
before.
you scroll up to
Oh, sorry. Here we go.
up to her.
Here we go. Sorry, everybody.
I've won all the prizes in Europe, every bloody one, so I'm delighted to win them all, the whole lot. Okay, that was Doris Lessing's characteristic reaction today when she was told by journalists she'd won the Nobel Prize for Literature. Finally, 40-odd years after the judges first considered the 88-year-old British writer. Born in what is now Iran and raised in what is now Zimbabwe, the author of the 1962 novel The Golden Notebook has always been claimed by the feminist movement but refuses the label. She's written novels about race and gender and society's ills and has more recently taken to science fiction. Today she's nearly £1 million richer. Here's our culture correspondent, Stephen Smith.
They couldn't tell Doris Lessing she'd won the Nobel Prize. She'd popped to the shops, but it was worth the wait for her acceptance speech.
Photographing you. Have you heard the news?
No.
You've won the Nobel Prize for Literature.
Oh, crap.
She'd also come into a cheque for £750,000. We don't know if the cabbie said, "Have you got anything smaller?"
I've won all the prizes in Europe, every bloody one, so I'm delighted to win them all. It's a sort of the whole lot, okay? It's a royal flush, okay?
It's wonderful, isn't it? So for anyone who didn't catch, her response to winning the Nobel Prize was, "Oh, Christ." Lovely. Okay. Another one of our star collections is the archive of Lee Child, who is author of the Jack Reacher crime thriller series. The archive contains 157 archival boxes. It arrived in 2018 and was released to the public in March 2022 with a Lee Child symposium and exhibition, which Lee Child attended in person very kindly. Heather Martin, Child's biographer, enjoyed privileged access in 2019 and 2020, and you can read the results in the authorised biography, The Reacher Guy. The archive reveals the building of a publishing juggernaut and a huge commercial success. It reveals how Lee Child developed his writing and how an author-agent relationship can develop into successful work as well. A huge part of the archive is actually made up of fan mail. It's one of my favourite parts of the archive. The fans' loyalty is immense and they're absolutely not afraid to criticise Lee Child. They write to him saying what they did and didn't like about the books and the characters and what they want to see in the next one or what they don't want to see in the next one. We have a hefty folder of letters from dedicated fans complaining to Child about the casting of Tom Cruise in the Jack Reacher movie. Reacher is characterized as a huge muscle-bound ex-military police officer, so Tom Cruise didn't fit the reader's imagination. One fan describes him as that pipsqueak from the movie. The fans send detailed criticisms of the casting, suggesting who should play Reacher, and some even include some photographs and news clippings of burly men more suited to Reacher's stature. It's amazing, really. We also have letters of praise from Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, two US presidents, but also from 94-year-old ladies. One of my favourites is from Nick, a semi-literate prison inmate who discovered a love of reading through the Jack Reacher series. So another fantastic part of Lee Child's archive are the handwritten manuscripts of Child's first novel, his first Reacher book, Killing Floor. So Lee Child himself refers to this story as the mythology. that when Child was made redundant from his job in television production, on the way home, he goes into WH Smith and he buys 6 pads of paper and a pencil, and he goes home and he sits down and writes Killing Floor. And we have the manuscripts. So apparently he still has the pencil. So changing pace a little bit, I'd like to introduce you to Patricia Crampton, who was born in 1925 in India and raised in Buckinghamshire. Crampton attended St Hugh's College, Oxford, studying modern languages and became a literary translator. Her first professional role was translating for the Chief of Counsel for War Crimes in Nuremberg between 1947 and 1949. Her role was primarily at the English section as a document translator and reviewer at the Palace of Justice, where she worked on the trials of SS officers, Nazi doctors accused of conducting medical experiments on wartime prisoners, as well as the trial of German chemical company IG Farben. So we have her letters, photographs and papers from that time. They're absolutely extraordinary. Crampton later worked as a translator for NATO and became a freelance literary translator after her marriage to the sculptor Sean Crampton. Patricia translated in her career 200 children's books and over 50 adult novels, including Dick Bruner's well-loved Miffy books. She campaigned for translators' working conditions and professional recognition. A highlight from the collection comes from her time working in Nuremberg. Crampton, while she was there, met and fell in love with a Jewish novelist, playwright and painter, Wolfgang Heidelschmier. Heidelschmier was serving as an interpreter at the Nuremberg trials, and the couple were engaged to be married. In 1949, Wolfgang calls off the engagement after discovering Crampton's family objected to the marriage due to his religion. He wrote, "My darling Patsy, this is one of the unhappiest moments of my life. I cannot marry you. I suppose deep down I must have known it for a long time, probably from the moment we got your father's letter." The couple, however, remained in touch throughout their lives, and in 1984, Crampton was awarded the Scheigel-Tick Prize. I'm sure I've pronounced that wrong, I do apologise, for her translation of Heidelschmier's work Marbo, a fictional biography. It really is an extraordinary collection, and we're very fortunate to have just digitised a rare aluminium pressed metal disc from the collection, which we think is from about 1935. So more on that to come. So another wonderful item from our collection, another wonderful archive collection, is from Roger Deakin, the writer, environmentalist and documentary maker. In 1974, he moved to Suffolk, having himself rebuilt a ruined 16th century timber-framed farmhouse on the edge of Mellis Common, Walnut Tree Farm, which features in his later published work. He's most famous for writing Waterlog, A Swimmer's Journey Through Britain, published in 1999, which was an account of him swimming across the British Isles, wild swimming across the British Isles. Roger Deakin died in 2006, and his recently finished manuscript of Wildwood was published posthumously. And also posthumously was Wildwood, A Journey Through the Trees. This was based on his diaries and notebook, where he wrote about his thoughts and feelings about life on Walnut Tree Farm and the natural environment that he lived in, that he loved so much. Patrick Barkham's biography, The Swimmer, The Wildlife of Roger Deakin, was researched in the archive and was published in 2023. One of the star items of this collection is we actually hold Roger Deakin's swimming trunks. We only take items that are integral to the creative writing process, and the swimming trunks are without doubt part of Deakin's process. If you'd like to see them in person, they're actually on loan at the moment to the Design Museum in London for their swimming design exhibition called Splash. So they'll be there all summer. I'm missing my star item at the moment. Lovely. Okay, so it's just a whole list of star collections today. So we're also very lucky to have the actor, comedy writer and UEA alumni, Charlie Higson. Higson is probably most well known for co-writing the comedy show, The Fast Show in the 90s, something I very much grew up with. And he's now a very successful author of young adult novels, including the Enemy series and young Bond novels. He's also a TV screenwriter, and we have some amazing script writing and development material for the 2015 adaptation of Jekyll and Hyde for ITV. And these archives are studied by our script writing and adaptation students. Higson's archive has some really fascinating correspondence from his publishers and agents with concerns about the level of violence portrayed in the young Bond novels. There's a discussion around how the young readers absolutely love the blood and the guts and the violence, but the trouble is getting it past the parents and the librarians. So many of our archive collections have really valuable insights into the literary world, into the publishing world, the screenwriting world, which are really appreciated by our students. Now, archives should be like children. You shouldn't really have a favourite, but if I was allowed to have a favourite, it might be Naomi Alderman. So we're very lucky to have the archive of Naomi Alderman. Let me introduce you to Naomi. She grew up in London in an Orthodox Jewish community. She did her creative writing MA at UEA in 2002 to 2003, and her debut novel was Disobedience, which was written as part of the MA, and which was published in 2006. And it has also been made into a film as well, starring Rachel Weisz. In 2012, Naomi was selected as a protege by Margaret Atwood as part of the Rolex mentorship program. And her fourth novel, The Power, won the Bailey's Women's Prize for Fiction in 2017 and has been adapted by Seven Sisters into a Prime TV series. So just to give you a little bit of insight into the relationship between Naomi and Margaret Atwood, I've got a little video for you from Rolex, from the mentorship program. Let me get this to play.
Part of what one does in this position is door opening. The person that you're opening the door for can go through, or something else may come through that door. When you open a door like that, you never know what the result may be. Various connections are made that way, and some of them are completely unexpected.
If you're alive, if there's anyone alive, you've come down in a nest of hostiles. Your only safe path is towards the tower. You should be able to see that from where you are. Just run.
One of the interesting things about Naomi is that she has a parallel life as a video game developer.
Only one zombie is close to reaching you. Just put on a burst of speed now.
Her zombies run, exercise, and what do you call that? App. It's an app. She's interested in weird, geeky types of things, like me.
Why is it not working? No, you know, these pieces of technology, dear.
We speak the same language.
Margaret suggested that because I was interested in zombies, that we would write a story together.
I don't think Rolex have ever had a zombie story come out of their mentorship program before, but there's a first for everything. Writing with Naomi gives me a sense of where some helpful hints might usefully be applied.
It's very exciting, and very exciting to see how she works. That's an act of tremendous generosity, to show the bones of how you work and how you put things together. She's so clever.
What they're giving Naomi is time, which is actually the best thing you can give any artist. So you could call it structured time in a way, and another person is inserted into this time.
There are big questions about where I take my career, how one makes that decision. To be able to talk about that with somebody who really understands those business questions as well as the creative questions is wonderful.
Everyone and their dog wants to be a writer. Publishing itself is in some turmoil, as is book selling. So how to navigate these very choppy waters?
This whole thing is just an invitation to be brave, and just to be able to go around with Margaret Atwood is just a source of inspiration and courage.
Good reading of symbolism.
I think that Naomi and I will always be connected. We'll continue to interact when the year is up. We're not finished yet.
Okay, sorry, that was a bit quiet, everybody. The gist of it is that Naomi Alderman and Margaret Atwood wrote a zombie video game app episode together as part of the mentorship. So one of the most extraordinary pieces in the Alderman archive is the first draft of the novel, The Power. So The Power is a global bestseller. I don't know if anybody's read it, but I'd highly recommend it. It's ever so good. So 200,000 words into writing The Power, Alderman can't finish it, and she considers scrapping it, just putting it in the bin. In 2012, her Rolex mentorship with Margaret Atwood prompts her to reassess the manuscript, to look at it again. In the published version of The Power, there are fewer than 2,000 words of that original draft that make it into the published novel. The manuscript of the original unpublished work lives only at BACW, so we're very lucky to have that. The students come and study the difference between the manuscripts. And if you'd like to see more of Margaret Atwood, you can see her in conversation with Andrew Cowan at UEA in 2014 on our UEA Live website. So we're very lucky to have writers come and talk at UEA Live kind of all year round. Lovely. So how do we collect all these wonderful archives? How do we get our hands on them? And how do we choose what to keep? So in the archive, we have a collection development policy, which gives us a direction as to what we should and shouldn't be collecting. And we do go out and proactively seek literary archive collections, but we also get lots of people coming to us and offering us things, many, many more than we could sensibly accept, unfortunately. We do have a date range that we work with. We collect contemporary literature from 1945 onwards, right until the present day. I once collected the manuscript of a book the day before it was published, which was quite exciting. Felt like that brought it all right up to date. So we have a set of themes to guide us in our collecting, and it's important that our collections hold together and make sense for researchers who are coming to see us. So we concentrate on nature writing, comedy, screen and theatre writing, biography and non-fiction, contemporary literature, literary translation, and contemporary poetry as well. Our overarching golden rule is that collections have to align with research and teaching interests at the university, and they must be actively used. Otherwise, we just can't justify taking it. And I think that's really where we differ from other archives who maybe collect on a kind of geographic basis or a kind of on one organisation. We also have a governance group of academics from across the humanities faculty who advise us on the approaches that we get and help us decide what to accept or whether something will have a better life at a different archive. So you'll be relieved to hear it's not just me making the decisions and giving the yes or no on what gets kept and what doesn't, what gets collected. And really the concentration of our collecting efforts is that we try to be responsible and ethical in the amount of material that we take, and we try and make sure we're not biting off more than we can chew. We don't want things to sit uncatalogued in the back for years and years. We want to be able to use our material straight away and for it to have a working life. We are unique in the way that we collect archives, and there is a reason for that. Literary archives can have a huge commercial value. They can be worth a lot of money. There are a lot of American institutions who have big purchasing power, who are looking to add successful writers to their collections. And that's okay. That's just the environment that we work in at the moment. And what we like to do is offer an alternative solution for British writers or writers who are based in the UK. So we don't have purchasing power at UEA, unfortunately. But what we do instead is we take material on loan, and we call it a storehouse model loan. We might, instead of waiting until somebody's at the end of their career and they're very eminent, we try and approach writers earlier in their career and ask them to loan us a small amount of material, possibly around a particular work. And if they need to take it away again, maybe to sell it or do something else with it, they can give us 6 months notice, and that's absolutely fine. No hard feelings, they can have it back. So pretty much all the material we have is on loan, apart from some of our big collections. And this allows us to have a rolling stock of contemporary archive collections based in the UK, and writers retain that security of that commercial value should they ever need it in the future. So it's working so far. Nobody's taken anything away yet. So that works for us. Lovely. Okay, so we also try and be conscious of some of the gaps in our collections and some of the absent voices. We're recently really fortunate to have an externally funded research project called, I'm going to take a deep breath before I say this, New Ways of Capturing, Collecting and Curating Towards a Centre for Contemporary Poetry in the Archive. Whew, it's a long title. It was funded by the Mellon Foundation, and it ran from 2022. In this project, we tried to collect the archives of poets, contemporary poets from underrepresented backgrounds. So we are talking about poets of colour, queer poets, performance poets, working class poets. So poets who you don't normally find in the archive. And we're trying to change that narrative and get some different voices into our literary archive. And the poets were selected by a panel of industry and archival experts who were external to UEA. And we took a community-led approach to collecting the content, by which we mean we allowed the poets to lead on what documented and evidenced their creative process. So instead of us saying, if it's not a handwritten manuscript or diary, we're not interested, we let them tell us what should be in your archive, what should represent your creative process. And the project had a series of community events run by the poets in Norfolk libraries to promote creative writing and engagement with poetry. And we also managed to get some student curated exhibitions of the archive material that we collected as well, which was really exciting. There is a website where you can see the launch events, there are published reports, and the poets actually wrote some creative pieces about the project as well, which you can access there. I do have a video of Gail McConnell reading her poem, which is The Worm as Archivist, but I might skip over that because we're getting a bit short of time. Lovely. So in the project, we collected Anthony Varney Capadeo, Joelle Taylor, Jay Bernard, Gail McConnell, alongside the poetry fellow who helped us with the project, Will Harris. We had interviews with the authors to establish what was archival and reflected their creative process. And the project produced some amazing material. Some of the unusual items we collected were a snow globe, a seahorse, a plait of hair, a packet of Rizzlers, and an envelope with a torn up poem inside. This project really challenged our notion of what archival means. And it helped us to understand barriers for poets in depositing their work and allowing a range of voices to live in the archive. So we'll send out the link to Gail McConnell reading her poem if you'd like to read it later, listen to it later even. One of our big challenges at the moment at BACW is the digital future. And we have now acknowledged the future at BACW is digital. And there's 3 reasons for that. One is that our writers are working digitally. If we want BACW to continue, we need to be prepared to preserve digital literary material for the long term. Another reason is we already hold obsolete hardware, floppy disks, USB sticks, hard drives, all sorts of other things with unique content on which can only be safely accessed through digital transfer. And the third reason is that we already hold obsolete born digital material, which can't be accessed without transferring to a modern digital system. So we need to think seriously about what we're doing with digital. So the digital future at UEA involves a very exciting, very sophisticated digital preservation system called Preservica. We're very lucky to have this, and we are learning how to use it at the moment. It's an end-to-end digital preservation system. So it does everything for us, basically. But the system does still have an economic and an environmental cost. Every digital item that you commit to preserving long term is creating a carbon footprint. So we need to think carefully about what we're preserving and why, and to make sure that we're doing the right thing. Preservicus still requires active management. It is a tool, not a solution, unfortunately. So my learning curve is going up very steeply at the moment while I learn how to use this system so that we can preserve literary archives for the future. Racing to the end there. Lovely. And my final message really from the literary archives, from 10 years of literary archives at UEA, at BACW, is that everyone is welcome to come and use us, to see our archives and be in touch with us. You can see our website on the screen, and if you've got any questions, you can email us archives@uea.ac.uk. Thank you so much for listening. It's been a pleasure.